All right, let's dive into the mind of Charlie Munger. We're going to be exploring excerpts from Poor Charlie's Almanac. It's a collection of his wit and wisdom and really trying to understand how this guy thinks. You probably know him as Warren Buffett's right-hand man, but he's so much more than that. He's got this fascinating approach to life and learning that we're going to unpack today. Specifically, we're going to focus on two key ideas: the lattice work of knowledge and how he uses what he calls mental models to make better decisions.
What's really captivating about Munger's approach is that it's not about being an expert in just one area. He believes in drawing wisdom from all sorts of disciplines, weaving them together to create this intricate web of understanding. That's what he calls the lattice work of knowledge.
Okay, so it's not just about knowing a lot of facts, it's about connecting those facts and seeing how they relate to each other across different fields.
Right. And each piece of knowledge, each concept or principle he learns, it becomes a mental model, a lens through which he can view the world. He stresses understanding the why behind things, the underlying principles that drive events and decisions.
I see. So it's not enough to just know that something happened, you have to grasp the deeper forces at play.
Exactly. Munger has this great analogy. He says, you can't just empty a bathtub to take in more water. You have to actually absorb and connect the ideas. Simply memorizing facts without understanding their significance is useless.
That makes a lot of sense. And the book dives into how he actually builds this lattice work, right?
Absolutely. One of his heroes is Benjamin Franklin, who, as you know, was an inventor, a statesman, a writer, you name it. Munger sees Franklin's diverse accomplishments as a prime example of someone with a well-developed lattice work of knowledge.
That's a fantastic example. It's almost like Franklin had a mental model for every situation he encountered.
Precisely. And what's interesting is that even seemingly ordinary experiences can contribute to this lattice work. There's a story in the book about Munger learning about friendship from his father. It wasn't some big lecture. It was a simple event where his father showed him the importance of fairness and consideration, even in the smallest interactions.
This highlights a key point. Your lattice work isn't built just from textbooks. It's woven from everyday experiences, from observing how people behave, from the little lessons life throws your way.
That's a great point. Munger believes you can even learn from those who are no longer with us. He's a huge advocate for reading biographies. He calls it making friends with the eminent dead, tapping into their experiences and insights.
It's like having a personal mentorship from history's greatest minds. And I love how this all ties back to the idea of building this lattice work. It's not just about accumulating knowledge, it's about finding wisdom in unexpected places.
Exactly. Now, you might be wondering how all of this translates into making better decisions. Well, Munger is known for his incredible investing success. So let's look at how he applies this multidisciplinary approach in that arena.
Okay, because he clearly doesn't just follow the herd when it comes to investing.
Right. He talks about Ted Williams' 77-cell strike zone in baseball. Williams was incredibly selective, only swinging at pitches in his sweet spot. Similarly, Munger believes in being patient and waiting for the perfect opportunity.
So it's about having the discipline to only invest when the odds are in your favor, just like Williams waited for the perfect pitch to swing, not just jumping at every opportunity that comes your way.
Exactly. This is where Munger challenges conventional thinking in the financial world. He's skeptical of traditional financial theories, things like beta and modern portfolio theory. He even famously said, "None of it makes any sense to me." He sees the market as a complex system influenced by human behavior, not just abstract formulas.
This is where things get really interesting. Munger doesn't just look at numbers. He's fascinated by human psychology, by the quirks in our thinking that lead us to make irrational choices, especially when money is involved.
He is. He emphasizes the importance of understanding psychological biases, those mental traps that can cloud our judgment.
So it's not enough to just understand the financials of a company. You also have to understand the psychology of the market, how human emotions can drive prices up or down.
Right. And another crucial aspect of his approach is his emphasis on ethical behavior. He believes in doing the right thing, even if it doesn't bring the biggest immediate financial gains.
But this principle goes beyond finance. It applies to how you build a business, how you treat your employees, even how you interact with your family. It's about that long-term view, that understanding that trust and reputation are invaluable assets.
Absolutely. And it's not just about investing either. This multidisciplinary approach applies to all areas of life, from choosing a career to navigating personal relationships.
He uses that great analogy of the man with a hammer. If all you have is a hammer, every problem looks like a nail, right?
Exactly. That's why he stresses the importance of having a wide range of mental models, being able to approach a problem from different angles.
This reminds me of that anecdote from the book about the biologist Thomas Hunt Morgan. He banned calculators from his department because he wanted his researchers to focus on the big ideas, the nuggets of gold, not get bogged down in calculations.
That's a perfect illustration.
But
It's about seeing the forest for the trees, not getting lost in the minutia. And speaking of mistakes, Munger's very open about learning from them, especially the ones where he chose to do nothing.
he even categorizes his mistakes, right? He talks about mistakes of omission, the things he should have done but didn't. And then there are the mistakes of commission, the things he did that he shouldn't have.
Yes, and he highlights the importance of learning from those missed opportunities, what he calls the billions he lost by not taking action when he saw a good thing.
That's a powerful lesson. It's easy to beat yourself up over the mistakes you make, but what about the opportunities you miss entirely? It's a blind spot for a lot of people.
It really is. And this leads us to one of Munger's most intriguing concepts, the Lollapalooza effect.
This is where it gets really interesting. So a Lollapalooza effect is when multiple forces combine to create a powerful outcome, right? Kind of like a chain reaction.
Exactly. Think of it as a perfect storm, but in a positive way. Munger uses the example of Disney's success. It wasn't just one thing, but a combination of brilliant management, strategic acquisitions, and the rise of home video. All these factors converging to create massive growth.
And he contrasts that with the new Coke fiasco, where Coca-Cola failed to understand basic consumer psychology and took a huge hit.
Precisely. It's a reminder that even with a great product, if you don't understand the psychological forces at play, you can make disastrous decisions.
This Lollapalooza idea is so useful. You could apply it to analyzing anything, from historical events to personal successes and failures. It really helps you appreciate how different forces can work together to amplify an outcome.
It does. It's a framework for understanding how seemingly unrelated factors can interact to create significant outcomes.
Yeah.
And it highlights the importance of having a broad perspective.
So it all comes back to that lattice work of knowledge, being able to connect the dots between different disciplines. That's what allows you to see those Lollapalooza effects in action, right?
Absolutely. And that's one of the things that makes Charlie Munger such a fascinating figure.
He's definitely given us a lot to think about so far, and this is just the tip of the iceberg. There's so much more to explore in his thinking.
There is. But before we move on, I'd love to hear what's resonating with you so far. What are some key takeaways that stand out to you from this first part of our deep dive?
It's amazing how much ground we've already covered, and it's so clear that Munger's approach to building this lattice work of knowledge isn't just some abstract theory. He actually uses it to make real-world decisions, especially in investing.
Yes, what's particularly compelling is how he advocates for a multidisciplinary approach, not just in investing, but in all aspects of life.
Absolutely. He's constantly encouraging us to step outside our comfort zones, to borrow lenses from other disciplines, to see the world through the eyes of a historian, a psychologist, even a physicist. To truly grasp the complexities of the world, we can't rely solely on our own narrow field of expertise.
Right, and he's not afraid to challenge conventional wisdom. His critique of how investing is often taught is a prime example. He sees those traditional financial theories as overly simplistic and detached from the realities of human behavior.
It's like he's saying, hey, these formulas might look good on paper, but they don't always capture the messy, unpredictable nature of the real world.
Exactly. He sees the market as a complex system influenced by human behavior, not just abstract formulas. And remember his classic line, "None of it makes any sense to me," referring to those complex models. He's more interested in the underlying value of a business, the long-term potential.
He's not swayed by short-term trends or market hype. He's looking for those businesses that are built to last, that have a solid foundation and a clear vision for the future.
Yes, and this is where his understanding of psychology really comes into play. He emphasizes the importance of understanding psychological biases, how our emotions can cloud our judgment, especially when it comes to money.
It's like that story he tells about the guy who sold fishing tackle with those crazy, brightly colored lures. When asked if fish actually take those lures, the guy replied, "Mister, I don't sell to fish."
That's a perfect analogy for how some financial products are marketed. They appeal to our emotions, our desire for quick riches, rather than sound reasoning.
Munger is all about being rational, thinking clearly, and not letting your emotions drive your decisions.
Absolutely. And another key aspect of his approach is his emphasis on ethical behavior. He believes in building a reputation for honesty and integrity, which he sees as not just the right thing to do, but also good for business in the long run.
It's about building trust, not just chasing short-term profits.
Precisely, and he's very critical of the short-sightedness that often prevails in corporate America. He sees this focus on quarterly earnings and stock prices as detrimental to building sustainable businesses.
He even coined the term "embezzlement" to describe how layers of unnecessary costs and fees can siphon away wealth from investors and businesses.
It's his way of highlighting how these seemingly small inefficiencies can add up to huge losses over time.
He's a master of spotting those hidden costs, those subtle ways in which value can be eroded.
He is, and he's not afraid to call out bad behavior, even when it's common practice. His take on stock options and executive compensation is a great example. He sees those practices as often being rigged to benefit a select few at the expense of the company and its shareholders.
He's a staunch advocate for transparency and accountability, for aligning incentives in a way that benefits all stakeholders, not just the top brass.
Exactly. And what's so impressive is that he's constantly learning and evolving. Even in his later years, he's still seeking out new knowledge, refining his mental models.
He embodies that lifelong learner mindset, that intellectual curiosity that keeps him sharp and engaged. It's like his mind is always searching for new connections, new insights.
It is, and he's incredibly generous in sharing his wisdom. Poor Charlie's Almanac is like a treasure trove of insights and practical advice.
It really is. It's a testament to his belief in the power of learning and the importance of passing on knowledge to the next generation.
It is. Another thing that really struck me is his emphasis on the importance of having a strong support system, surrounding yourself with people you admire and trust.
It's clear that his partnership with Warren Buffett has been a source of immense joy and intellectual stimulation.
It has. He also emphasizes the role of family and close friends in providing guidance and perspective.
It's a reminder that even the most brilliant minds need a community, a network of people who challenge and support them.
They do, and this brings us to another key concept from the book: the importance of having a clear set of values, a moral compass to guide your decisions.
Munger is very outspoken about his beliefs, his commitment to doing the right thing, even when it's difficult.
He talks about having an iron prescription for avoiding ideological extremes, being able to argue against your own position better than your opponents.
He's all about being open-minded, willing to consider different viewpoints, and not getting trapped in dogma.
Exactly, and this ties back to his emphasis on rationality, on making decisions based on sound reasoning, not blind faith or ideology.
It's about being a critical thinker, constantly questioning assumptions and seeking evidence to support your beliefs.
Right, and he's not afraid to admit when he's wrong, to learn from his mistakes, and adjust his course accordingly.
That humility, that willingness to adapt, is essential for growth and continued learning.
It is, and he even uses humor to poke fun at himself, to acknowledge his own shortcomings. It's that self-awareness that makes him so relatable, even though he's clearly a genius.
He doesn't take himself too seriously, which is refreshing in a world where people are often trying to project an image of perfection.
He's all about substance over style, about focusing on what truly matters.
And he's incredibly generous in sharing his knowledge. Poor Charlie's Almanac is like a condensed version of his life's wisdom.
It's a gift to anyone who wants to learn from one of the greatest thinkers of our time.
And it's a reminder that we all have the capacity to build our own latticework of knowledge, to become more effective thinkers and decision makers.
We do so thinking about all we've discussed so far. What stands out to you as the most valuable takeaway from Munger's approach?
It's incredible how Munger has built this whole philosophy around lifelong learning and making better decisions. He doesn't just tell us what to think, he's teaching us how to think.
He is. And a key part of that is recognizing our own limitations. Munger is fascinated by how our minds work, especially the ways we can trip ourselves up. He's compiled a sort of a catalog of human misjudgment, a list of mental traps that can lead us astray.
He calls them tendencies, right? Things like overestimating our own abilities. I know I'm guilty of that sometimes.
Exactly. He calls that one the tendency for excessive self-regard. We overestimate our own abilities or the value of things we own. Or the tendency to overreact to losses, what he calls deprival superreaction. We get way more upset about losing something than we are happy about gaining the same amount.
It's like when you miss a flight by just a few minutes, it feels so much worse than if you had just missed it by an hour.
That's a great example. Munger sees these tendencies as deeply ingrained in human nature,
Yeah.
often operating on a subconscious level. He doesn't condemn them. He just wants us to be aware of them, to recognize when they might be influencing our thinking.
So it's about having that Meta-awareness, being able to step back and observe your own thought processes, almost like an outsider looking in. Easier said than done.
It is. But being aware is the first step. And then, armed with that awareness, you can start to develop strategies for mitigating those biases.
He talks about using checklists, right? Having a set of predetermined questions to guide your thinking in certain situations so you don't let your emotions take over.
Checklists are a great tool. He also emphasizes the importance of seeking out disconfirming evidence, challenging your own assumptions, looking for information that might contradict your initial beliefs.
It's so easy to fall into the trap of confirmation bias, only looking for information that supports what you already believe. But Munger wants us to be more like Charles Darwin, constantly testing our hypotheses, looking for weaknesses in our own arguments.
Exactly. It's about cultivating that intellectual humility, being open to the possibility that you might be wrong.
That can be tough, especially when we're dealing with issues we care deeply about.
You're right. Munger talks about the dangers of ideological extremes, getting so caught up in a particular viewpoint that you lose the ability to see things objectively.
He has that great line, "You need to be able to argue against your own position better than your opponents."
I love that. It's about having that intellectual flexibility, being able to hold multiple perspectives in your mind simultaneously, to see the nuances and complexities of any issue.
It's not about being wishy-washy or indecisive. It's about being intellectually rigorous, demanding evidence, and being willing to change your mind when presented with new information.
Right. And a big part of that is recognizing the limits of your own knowledge, the importance of staying within your circle of competence.
That's a key concept for investors, right? Knowing what you know and what you don't know. Not getting lured into investments that sound good but are outside your area of expertise.
Exactly. It's about being honest with yourself about your own strengths and weaknesses,
Hmm.
and being willing to walk away from opportunities that don't fit your skill set.
So much of this comes down to having the discipline to think clearly and rationally, even when your emotions are pulling you in a different direction.
It does. Munger talks about the importance of cultivating good habits, developing mental routines that support clear thinking and sound decision-making.
It's like training your mind, just like you would train your body for physical fitness, developing those mental habits that promote rationality, objectivity, and long-term thinking.
That's a great way to put it. It's a lifelong pursuit, constantly refining your approach, learning from your mistakes, and seeking out new knowledge.
And that's what makes Charlie Munger such an inspiring figure. He's a testament to the power of continuous learning, intellectual curiosity, and the pursuit of wisdom.
He's shown us that it's never too late to expand your mind, to challenge your assumptions, and to become a more effective thinker and decision maker.
We've covered so much ground in this deep dive. For me, what stands out is how Munger encourages us to build that lattice work of knowledge by drawing from different fields, by constantly seeking out new perspectives.
And he reminds us that it's not just about accumulating knowledge. It's about using that knowledge to make better decisions, to live a more thoughtful and fulfilling life.
So as we wrap up, here's a final thought for you to consider. What are some mental models, those key principles from different disciplines that you could add to your own latticework of knowledge? What are you curious about? What do you want to learn more about?
Keep learning, keep exploring, and keep building that mental framework that will help you navigate the complexities of life with wisdom and clarity.
Until next time, keep diving deep.